Alright, welcome to another Apache tutorial. This time we'll look at some easy symbology, and we'll look at the symbology select switch, which is this one on the stick. We'll also get into some hover and some tips and tricks for hovering, and then we'll move into transition from hover, transition to hover. After that we'll look at some sliding left and right, as well as going completely reverse. And once that's done, we'll have a flight through the city. Alright, so first things first, hit escape, adjust controls, and search for symbology select switch up or down, as long as you search for the symbology select switch. Now, make sure you set it to something that's fairly easy to reach. It's not vital, but it's quite nifty and handy to have. So set the up, set the down, and set the depress. We will not use depress today. Alright, and hit OK. So, what this does, the symbology select switch, changes the symbology of your hi-hat. So right now we are in hover mode. If I go down on the symbology select switch one more time, we're in bob-up mode. We will not use that today. And if I go down again, I'm back to hover. So going down switches between hover and bob-up. Hover, bob-up. Alright, if we go up on the same select switch, we will go to transition mode, as noted by the dashed lines, and further to cruise mode. In cruise mode we also have the barometric altitude, not just the radar altitude. Right, so go down on the switch again and we are back to hover mode. So a few things to keep your eye on at all times when you fly is the torque or power, or airspeed, altitude of course. And those will be the most important things to keep an eye on right here today. So the little circle in here can move around, and when it does move around outside the center, there will be a line connecting the circle with the center of the crosshair. This line and the circle indicates which direction at which velocity you're moving. So if the circle and the line starts to move up to the right, you are going forward and to the right. It's moving straight to the right, you're just sliding or slipping right. And of course, back is back and so forth. Now the circle and the line symbol exists in hover mode, and it exists in transition mode. The difference is, well, one of the differences, in hover mode, once you reach 5 knots or thereabout, the line will be fully extended and the circle would disappear. In transition mode, that only happens when you reach somewhere around 50 knots or so. So that's for transitioning up to higher speeds or back from high speeds to lower speeds to help you out. And I find it most useful in the hover mode. So let's just take off a little quick and I'll show you how it behaves, and then we'll land and I'll show what I use it for mostly. So adding some collective power, and up and about. So we're moving slightly to the right and slightly back, and we can go a little bit forward, and let's go a little bit left. And you see the line or circle reappeared in the center. Once we slow down again, they will both connect. So this is very useful when you're hovering or trying to get into a hover, because you know exactly which way you're going, especially when you don't have anything to look at. Maybe you're high up, or bad weather, or you just can't orient yourself with the ground. Now let's land again. Just put her down gently, and I'll show you how I use it instead. Right, down. Alright, so as you can see, the circle went up with the line connected to it. If we're moving right and forward, the circle goes up here, connects it with the line. I find it much easier to get into a stable hover if I reverse it. If I see the circle and the line as an arrow pointing which direction I should move my stick in order to come to a stop. Alright? So if the circle is up here and the line points down to the center down here, which it will, that points me to moving my stick down left. Alright? Now if the circle is up here, points down there with this line, that means pull my stick down right in order to come to a hover. So let's try it. Okay, so let's move forward a little bit. Okay, so now it points slightly down and to the left. Right, and you just keep it like that, wherever it points you. Points left, left. It's much easier, at least for me, to use my stick in the direction the line points. So I'm moving forward right. The line points down left, so pull the stick. Alright, easy peasy once you practice. Right, let's get settled and let's look at the transition mode for the next one. Okay, new aircraft, same setup. Oh, and by the way, I forgot to mention I did not trim anything at all while hovering. I just left it at the standard settings. And second, usually when I practice, I do it with full fuel and a full loadout, just to make sure I fly the aircraft as heavy and difficult as possible. Alright, so this time we're in hover mode. If you go up on the symbology select switch, you move into transition mode. So let's just take off with the hover mode. We'll move a little bit forward, turn right, and head down the parking ramp. Alright, and let's move forward. And once we pass 5 knots or so, symbology select switch up in transition mode, and let's go right. Now, the faster you get, the more lift the helicopter produces, which means the faster you get, the more you can ease off on your torque, unless you want to fly faster and faster and faster. But my needed torque to hover was around 75 to 80%. Now I'm staying flying at like 56% or so, and doing 50 knots, 54. And let's ease back on the torque or collective. Pull back on the stick. And this is important. The slower you get, the more power you need to add again in order to stay in the air. Alright. So let's try that again. Let's turn around. So as you can see now, I'm kind of holding my altitude. at around, as you see the light pole there, at around 90% power. When I start moving forward, I can pull back on the power and keep my altitude, or I can of course keep the power and increase my speed much more. And as you notice, I still haven't trimmed anything. I tend to trim the Apache once I get to about 70 knots. Also, you see me kind of pointing my nose here, but flying that way. So you should always try and keep the ball between the lines. That indicates clean flying. Alright, so let's trim it. We're trimmed for about 80 knots. And ease off the collective and power. Pull back a little bit on the stick to maintain your altitude. And just start off easy when you start with the transitions. You don't have to try and stop on a dime. You won't be able to anyway with the with a fully loaded Apache. And as you can see, my power now is quite low, just like 40% almost. But the slower I get, the more power I need to add. Alright, so we're just doing this slow and easy. Also, you need to counter with your pedals in order to maintain your nose straight. Just pull back a little bit on the stick, add a little bit of power, counter left with the pedals. We're just doing this very nice and easy now. More power, more left pedal. And about now I retrim it to ease off the pressure on the stick, or actually the pull on the stick. Symbology select switch down, bring back the hover mode. Always counter with your power. If you get too much, lower it some. If you get too low, give some extra. Alright? Cool. Let's turn around and do one more. Alright, so this time a little bit faster. So pick a big open spot. Doesn't matter if it's above a runway or parking way, or you know, well, forest might not be a good thing, but a field, for example, and practice. So again, trimming at about 70 knots, and I find that from 70 knots trimmed, I can just add a slight pressure on the stick and go quite a bit faster if I increase the power, of course. Or I can come to a complete hover and not pull back too hard on the stick. So it's a pretty good speed to trim it to if you're just flying around in an area where you know you need to maneuver. Of course, if you're gonna fly for half an hour following a path, just trim in for whatever speed you're at. But I find for a combat environment or so, about 70 knots is quite nice. Alright, and let's try and pull back a little bit harder. Collective down, losing altitude, counter collective, collective up. Alright, so a bit faster stop this time. So go back and forth like this, alright? And trim. The more you practice this, the better it will get. And of course learn how to counter with your pedals as well. Adding more torque, more power will force you to add more left pedal, alright? Excellent. Let's land, and this is gonna be a hard one. That was nice. Alright. So next step. Okay, your aircraft. So you got the hover going for you. got the transition to forward flight and back to hover. You know how that works, you just need to practice. Now let's look at some side slipping, some reversing, and have a look at this little ball as well. So if the ball moves to the left outside these two lines, it means you're not flying clean. Same thing goes for the right. If the ball is on the left, you need to apply left pedal. If it's on the right, you need to apply right pedal. Now if you turn left, you also need to apply some left pedal, though it's not needed very often in the Apache, since this is the way the torque moves you anyway, or counterclockwise. But if you go into right turn, you do need to apply some right pedal in order to make the turn clean. Now you don't always have to fly clean, that's kind of up to you. Sometimes you just need to push the pedals hard and go full outside this. We'll have a look at that later. But for now, let's take off. Let's start with sliding left and right, then reversing. Then I have a quick flight around the parking area, looking just at this little ball here. Okay, so let's get started. And we're up. Alright, so once you're into a fairly stable hover, move the stick just to the right. Doesn't have to be much. See, just a few millimeters on the actual stick. Start off slow. You don't have to do 100 knots sideways, alright? And once you get used to this, well, sorry about that. Let's just move outside a little bit. Move forward rather. Right. And settle back down. Let's head over to transition mode. So that's the symbology switch up. And let's just move the stick slightly to the right. And you do have to work with your stick forward and back as well, in order if you want to maintain a straight line. See, I pull the stick a little bit forward so I can slide forward right, and I can pull the stick back, and we can go back instead, back right. And of course we can come to a stop. And you always have to work with the pedals. And the power and the collective. Alright, so again, this is just about practice. And don't worry about doing this fast. It's quite rare that you have to do it fast. This is best used for going into masking or going to unmasking. So if we want to have a look-see look behind the wall here, behind the building, we can move forward. We don't have to be that close to the building either. Basically, want to have a look. Peek outside, see what we want to see, then go back in. Alright? Now, if you were doing something crazy like that, and you were going out at, you know, full speed, sideways, it would take you much longer to stop. It would be much harder. You might do something stupid like that, and everything is screwed up. Right? So, take it easy. You don't need to fly full speed all the time. Nice, slow, controlled. Right? So let's turn to the right here and have a look at the little ball I was talking about. So, adding some forward momentum. Left pedal in order to get it in line. Can be a little bit difficult to fly like this, but right, so got the trim there. So you see, if we turn right now, we need to apply right pedal. Let's just turn that off. Turning harder right, more right pedal. As you can see up here, I'm almost center right now. And turning to the left. Those of you who fly the Tomcat often will be quite used to adding pedals. Those of you who fly gliders in real life, or some simulators maybe, will be very used to using pedals as well. Now, the fact that you should fly clean doesn't mean you should always, you know, be completely in the center. If I wanna come around hard with the pedal, I can do that. And lower the collective some. Right. And let's have one look, or one last look. Let's just come down to some stability down here. Right, slow down, come back. As you can see, I'm just flying around practicing. Hopefully it will make some sense to you. And let's just reverse before we go into the stupid flying. And trim. Well, that wasn't a good trim. There we go. Alright, so reversing is actually quite easy in the Apache. Probably the best helicopter at going backwards. So just work with the collective, pull back on the stick, nice and easy. If you want to have some fun, you can just see how fast you can go. And again, the faster you go, the more lift you produce. And just as reversing a car, your pedals will act differently. And I have no idea what's behind me. Probably a building. And going forward, lowering collective. Working with the pedals. Coming to a stop. Racing collective. Don't want to come down too fast. And we're going forward again. Alright? So, practice, practice, practice. Now, let's have a look at one last thing before this tutorial is done. Alright, let's have a look at some practicing. So, the more you crash while training, the less you'll crash while flying missions, or if you're online, for example. So don't be afraid of flying into stuff. What we'll do now is take a flight through Dubai over there, parts of Dubai. We'll have the trim set to around 70 knots once we get up, and I'll show you can just leave it there and still have great control of the aircraft. You won't have any problem doing 180-degree turns, coming around, zigzagging and flying. So let's take off. Nice and easy. Some power and some forward flight. Heading over to transition mode. Coming right. Also, one more thing: if you push forward on the stick while doing some speed with the Apache, it's gonna want to roll to the left. All right. So if you want to lose altitude fast, don't push forward on the stick. Just lower the collective and combine it with pushing forward and right on the stick. Try it and test it, you'll notice what I mean. So we're doing 93 knots, 96, closing to 100. I've got my trim set for roughly 70 knots, so I'm the extra speed now I'm getting from pushing my stick slightly forward, as indicated up here. Let's just bring it down to street level. Find some places to practice, to train. And like I said, you will crash. It's gonna happen. And it's fine to do it a lot of times. I'm doing it a lot of times. It's kind of part of the learning process, kind of part of the fun. My big nemesis are these light poles here. So let's come around and let's see what the buildings have to offer. Alright? So I'm still trimmed for about 70 knots. And I will not retrim at all in the city here. And we can just keep coming around, adding power as we need, if we need, pulling harder on the stick. Now listen, I'm not saying this is the way you should fly around on missions or stuff like that, but it's very good practice. Alright? So just find your cities or whatever you want to fly in. Learn where you have the Apache, the rotor blades, your controls, your collective. The more you fly like this, the more you will get to know the helicopter. And you'll stop doing stupid crashes. Kind of like getting into VRS or having too low power when you come from a transition. Alright, so pick a good part, pick a good map. It could be valleys and canyons, cities, flying low along a river, for example. And it's not only good training, but it's actually a lot of fun as well. And again, I have not retrimmed from 70 knots. I can pull all these maneuvers without any real issue with that trim. And again, as I mentioned in previous videos, helicopters, you need to think maybe 2, 3, 4 steps ahead. So when I pull a turn like this, I won't necessarily go the direction my nose is pointing, alright? I'll keep going the direction the nose was pointing for quite a while, depending on the speed and performance of the helicopter and such. Much more so than an airplane. Alright, so keep practicing. If you have any questions, let me know. I'll gladly answer them. And we'll see what the next tutorial brings. Alright, enjoy.